And so this week, we're actually starting a new series. Last week, Pastor Scott came from the church plant in Florence, if you guys were here for that, and he set us up really well for where we're going for the next couple weeks, because he talked about encounters. He talked about the encounter that the disciples had with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration when he showed who he was, right, and all of that, and what happened through that encounter. And so the next couple weeks, we're going to be looking at that idea of how encountering Jesus changes our lives. How Jesus changes everything when you have a real encounter with him. We're going to be looking at stories throughout the Gospels of people who encountered Jesus and what that looked like and how it impacted them and how it changed them. So I'm excited as we go through the next couple weeks leading up to Easter to talk about these things, because some of them may be stories you're familiar with if you've been in church at all and you've kind of heard, maybe been around some of these things. If you're new to church altogether, there'll be new stories to you, and that's awesome. But they're not just stories. They're lives that have been changed, and they didn't just happen back then. It's still happening now. The same Jesus who changed lives in the Bible is still the same Jesus who's changing our lives right now today. We got to remember that, because if we forget that, we won't live like changed people. We'll live like, oh, well, I did church and I'm good. But Jesus wants to work through us today as he's continually changing us. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a situation in your life that after it happened, you would say, man, I'll never be the same? Can you think of any time, an encounter with somebody or something that happened where you were like, man, because of this, I don't know if my life will ever be the same again? It's a good thing to think about. And sometimes maybe going, I don't know, actually, if that's crazy things happen, but I don't know, did it change me? Well, see, I remember a story that I heard when I was a kid, and it stuck with me ever since I was like in elementary school, about someone's life who was deeply impacted and changed forever when they encountered Jesus. And it may be a name that some of you who are a little bit older in the room recognize, but maybe you've heard of a guy named Nicky Cruz. Now, Nicky Cruz, way back in the day, there may have been a movie you saw called The Cross and the Switchblade. There was his testimony. But this guy, Nicky Cruz, when I was a kid, I heard his story, and it stuck with me forever. So when I was thinking about lives that have been changed, he was the first person that popped into my head. So I want to share his story a little bit if you're not familiar with him. See, Nicky Cruz grew up in Puerto Rico, and he was one of 19 kids with his parents there. His parents were extremely abusive, did not follow Jesus. In fact, they were practicing occult stuff. And so he grew up in a horrible upbringing. When he was 15, his parents basically exiled from the family and sent him to New York City to live with an older brother in Brooklyn. So he gets to Brooklyn when he's 15. He's angry. He's had a horrible life. He decides, I'm not going to stay with my brother. I'm going to go out and make it on the streets. I'm going to make it my own way. He decided, I'm going to live one of those thug lives. I'm going to be someone who makes my way through violence and drugs and alcohol and whatever I have to do to rise to the top. And so shortly after he got to Brooklyn, he joined one of the worst gangs in Brooklyn. And within 6 months of joining one of the worst gangs in Brooklyn, he'd worked his way to the top of that gang, which shows you how aggressive he was as a person and filled with hate and violence and all those things. And he was going to be the king of Brooklyn. And this was a gang that the cops feared. This is a gang that other gangs feared. This was no joke. He had moved up the ranks, one of the most violent groups in the city of Brooklyn. And he had done everything you can imagine that you would have to do that, and did it willingly and enjoyed doing it. So at 16, 17 years old, this is this guy's life, right? That's how he's living. And somewhere in the midst of that, he encounters a skinny country preacher named Bruce Wilkerson. Bruce decides, I'm going to love Nicky Cruz regardless of how he feels about Jesus. And so this guy kept going after Nicky and trying to tell him about the love of Jesus. And Nicky beat him up, like literally beat him up, right? He threatened his life. He did all these things he could to keep this guy from pursuing him with the love of Jesus. And finally, one day, the love of Jesus broke through to Nicky's heart, and he was changed forever. He was changed. He went from being the leader of the most feared gang in Brooklyn and all the life of violence, anger, all those things that he had lived through. And God so transformed his life that he went on to become one of the world's best-known evangelists. Still, in his mid-60s, he is still doing this, traveling the world, going to inner cities and places all over the world that struggle with the violence, the gangs, all that stuff. He's going into those places, sharing his testimony, and seeing people changed forever. Now, I ask you a question. Was it Bruce Wilkerson who helped him change? No. Who did he encounter that changed his life? Jesus. And I love that story because it speaks so much to the power of what God does, and not just when we read the Bible and those stories for other people, for us. for you and for me. And if we sat down and I asked every single one of you, if you know Jesus, if you have a relationship with him, you could probably tell me about the time that you encountered Jesus and how it changed you. Because the idea of this series that we're going through the next couple of weeks is simply this: when you encounter Jesus, you will never be the same. You just won't. You can't be when you really encounter him, because he changes everything. We got to remember that as we go forward. Just like it happened for Nikki, just like it happened for many of us, or if it hasn't yet, it can, and God wants to. Because maybe your life has been similar to Nikki Cruz's. Maybe your life has been nothing like his was. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle. That's okay. Jesus wants to encounter you. He wants you to get to know him in a new and fresh way today. And so we're going to start looking at stories of people in the Bible over the next few weeks who encountered that. And the first one we're going to look at takes place in the book of John. Now, if you're familiar with the Bible, John is the fourth gospel. It's kind of the middle. Matthew, Mark, Luke. John is the last gospel, last book in the Gospels. And John chapter 1 is an interesting chapter because it's John who's writing this book setting the stage for who Jesus is and what he's going to do. Okay, so in John in the beginning, he introduces Jesus as God in the flesh, God who came down from heaven to make a way for us to be with him, God who moved into the neighborhood, in some translations, to be with us, right? And so you have John the Baptist who's coming before Jesus and telling people, listen, you got to prepare for this guy who's coming. You got to prepare for Jesus, because when he comes, he's going to change everything. Got to get your hearts ready. So John is having that message, and then Jesus comes on the scene. And Jesus goes to John, and John baptizes Jesus to initiate his ministry. Like to say, listen, this is the guy I've been telling everybody else about. He's here now. Right? He's here. He's going to change everything. Look to this guy for your life. He will change it. And so Jesus is starting to kind of get known a little bit in the first chapter of John towards the end. And he's walking along, and John the Baptist has disciples. Now, disciples are people who just followed his teaching. Right? There are people who are following him or learning from him about what it means to follow Jesus, because he was always pointing people to them. And here comes Jesus walking by, and John's like, look, there he is. That's the guy I've been talking about. That's the Lamb of God. He's the one who can save your soul. He's the one who can take away your sins. And two of John's disciples, the people who are following him, say, you know what? I'm going to go check that out. This is the guy he's been telling me about. I want to go find out if he's real or not. So this guy named Andrew and this other disciple, they go up to Jesus. They're like, hey, Jesus, so we've heard some stuff about you. Is it true? And of course, Jesus, being Jesus, he's like, he could have just said, yeah, absolutely. Here's my resume. Son of God. All these things he could have listed that would have been really, really cool. He didn't do that. He didn't play the authority card on them and say, you're right, you better listen to me. He did something very simple. He said, well, why don't you come and see? It's like, come on. Basically what he did is he invited him to his house for dinner. Right? Like one of the best ways to get to know somebody is go eat with them. And he's like, listen, come hang out with me in my house. We'll do dinner together, and then you tell me if I'm the real deal. And so Andrew goes with him. And after that time hanging out at Jesus' house, Andrew is convinced this is the Messiah. This is the guy that we've all been waiting for. Because remember, the Jewish people were convinced that the Messiah was coming. They've been waiting and praying and waiting for generations for that person to come to set them free from the Roman oppression, set them free from all these things that were holding them back, because they've been waiting. And Andrew leaves that dinner with Jesus convinced that Jesus is that guy. And then what does he do? He runs and grabs another guy, his brother Peter, and he brings him to Jesus. He says, you got to meet this dude. You got to meet this guy. He's amazing. He's who we've been waiting for. And so Peter comes and meets Jesus, and Peter's changed. And then after Jesus has those encounters, you got to understand this is what's going on. I'm setting the background for the story we're going to read. This is what's been happening. Jesus is starting to gather the disciples, the people who are going to follow him, his disciples, and Andrew and Peter, the first two that he runs into. And then after he has that encounter, that come and see idea, then he leaves to go on a trip to Galilee, which is another region. He starts heading that way, and he runs into a guy named Philip. And that's where we're going to pick up this story in John chapter 1, the story of Philip and this other guy, Nathaniel, that we're going to read a little bit about. But when we're talking about an encounter with Jesus, we got to remember that it's simply in one simple way. An encounter with Jesus starts by responding to his invitation. This idea of coming and seeing, which is really what Jesus modeled for his disciples every single time he called them. So we're going to start reading this story in John chapter 1. If you have your Bible, you can open up to it. It'll be on the screen, phones, tablets, whatever you got that's got this on there, you can look at it. But in John chapter 1, it starts off at 43, it says this: the next day Jesus decided to go to Galilee. Like I said, he was on a trip, he was moving around, moving out of the area where John baptized him, starting to travel, and he found Philip and said to him, "Come follow me." Philip was from Bethsaida, Andrew and Peter's hometown. So the section right before that I said where he found Andrew and Andrew found Peter, like these guys might have been connected because they were from the same town. Maybe they went to the same high school together. You don't know. But like Philip probably knew Andrew and Peter, right? So when he maybe heard they were part of Jesus' crew, like he was traveling with them now, they probably said, okay, well, if these guys are doing it, I should listen to this. But I want you to notice something. It says Jesus found Philip. Jesus went looking for Philip. He didn't just say, okay, whoever happens to run into me, I'll call. He went and looked. We have a Savior who comes and finds us. You got to remember that. We have a God who loves us so much, he comes after us. And he went and found Philip, and he said these simple things: come follow me. And what you find out is that Philip did. He went and followed him, and then because he went and followed Jesus, you see this pattern where then Philip went and said, hey, I can't keep this to myself. I got to go tell somebody else. So he went and found a guy named Nathanael. And he told him, we have found the very person Moses and the prophets wrote about. His name is Jesus. He's the son of Joseph from Nazareth. Do you see this pattern taking place at the beginning of these encounters where it's like someone meets Jesus for themselves. He's like, hey, just come watch, like get to know me. And they're so impacted by it so quickly, they have to go tell somebody else about it. Isn't that kind of how it works for Jesus in our lives? It's like, man, if you really encounter him and you're changed the way he can change you, you got to let somebody else know that can happen for them too. And you see this happening. Now, you don't know how long it was between when Philip met Jesus and then when Philip went and told Nathanael about it. It could have been a day, it could have been a couple days. That doesn't tell you exactly. It wasn't like Jesus is like, hey, come follow me. And Philip was like, awesome, let me go find Nathanael. I think there was probably a little bit of time in between where he got to know Jesus a little bit, and he said, I got to go tell my best buddy Nathanael. I got to tell the guy he needs to know about this because he's been waiting for this too. He's been waiting for this too. So he goes and tells him, we have found the guy I've been waiting for. Again, these are Jewish guys. They were been trained since they were little in Jewish teaching to know, to look out for the Messiah, the guy that Moses talked about, the prophets of old were talking about. They were looking for him. And he's like, that guy we've all been told to look for, he's here. You got to meet him. And then Nathanael, which I love because I can identify with this guy, Nathanael, all right, in this scenario. So Nathanael's kind of a skeptic. He's kind of a little bit of a doubter, if you will. I don't know, right? Because he says, Nazareth. Because remember, Philip just said he's from Nazareth. He said, Nazareth? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Come and see for yourself, Philip replied. You got to get that interaction a little bit right here, right? You got to get that interaction, that come and see moment that he has. Because Nathanael, he was an educated guy. All scholars believe he was he had gone through some schooling. Now again, they didn't have colleges and universities back then in the way they did things. People would get attached to a rabbi as their teacher, and they would follow him and learn from that rabbi. And so from little that we know of Nathanael, he was an educated guy. He'd probably gone to school. He probably studied the scriptures a little bit more than the average fisherman would have studied the scriptures. A little bit more advanced idea of what the Bible taught about Jesus and the Messiah and all those things they should be looking for. And so when Philip comes to him and says, hey, you got to meet this guy. He's the Messiah we've been waiting for. He had Nathanael's attention, right? Because he hears Messiah and he's like, ooh, I've been waiting for that. Like, okay. But then Nathanael's probably like, when Philip tells him, yeah, he's from Nazareth, he's like, oh, all right, well, you lost me at Nazareth. Because in that day and age, for whatever reason, Philip had this prejudice against Nazareth. Now, we don't even really exactly know why he didn't like Nazareth. We just know from that statement, can anything good come from Nazareth? There was something that he thought was bad about that place. There was not a reputation there that wasn't good about Nazareth. Now, what I think is interesting is I don't think he was saying that like as an actual question, that can anything good come from Nazareth? I think he was saying it more like a statement or like a phrase, like, hey, listen, nothing good comes out of Nazareth, right? Like that, we just almost like a cultural thing. Like everyone knows nothing good comes out of Nazareth, right? It's almost like that phrase we'd use today, like they come from the wrong side of the tracks. Something like that's kind of basically what Nathanael's saying here. He's like, Nazareth, all right, you lost me at Nazareth because every good Jewish scholar knows, or every good Jewish student knows that Jesus is going to come from Bethlehem, right? He's born in Bethlehem. Okay, so when you say Nazareth, it's like, why? The Messiah can't come from Nazareth. Nothing good comes from Nazareth. And I want to show you, and I know all of us are biblical geographic scholars in the room, but I think I'll probably help by showing you a map of why this is important. So if you see on the map up here, that yellow section towards the top, the very bottom you see Nazareth. The reason I want you to see this is because some of the prejudice, I think, comes from understanding the relationship between Nazareth and where it is. It's right on the border of Samaria. The Jewish people did not like the Samaritans. They didn't want anything to do with them. In fact, when they were traveling from Judea to Galilee, they would go around Samaria. Even though it's much quicker to cut through, they'd go all the way around to get there. So Nazareth was very close to the border of Samaria. So a lot of people associated it with Samaritans, and Jewish people were very like, listen, if you're from there, I can't even have anything to do with you. So that was part of it. The other part of it, you've got to understand, Nazareth was this tiny little nowhere town. You know, it was like East Kabum, Galilee. There was nothing going on there. Okay, like it was just like, it was only a few hundred people. It was up in the mountains. Like there was no reason, nothing good happened there. Like it wasn't a cultural trade center. It wasn't like on the route to anything. It was just out in the middle of nowhere. In fact, some scholars believe that even during that time, they were still even living in caves. And it's kind of like, they just were like this backwater town that had this reputation of nothing good can come from there. Like why, like Nazareth, like, you know, but the thing is you find out about Nathanael that I think personally is part of his problem with Nazareth is that he's actually from Cana, which if you notice is right above it, right? And so I think that it's kind of like one of those rivals that you have, because Cana was another small town. It was probably a little bit bigger than Nazareth, so it's kind of like Cana probably got looked down by the other bigger cities, but then they also found the smaller city then looked down on for them, right? And so I think Cana and Nazareth are actually probably rival towns. And so it was probably more like, okay, Jesus' high school played Nathaniel's high school in the homecoming game, and they didn't like each other because of it. Like that kind of rivalry, right? Like the town, that kind of thing. So you have to understand that this is what's going on in this scenario of like, okay, Nazareth, like I know nothing good comes out of that place. Like, listen, I've been told since I was little, like, you know, listen, avoid Nazareth. Nothing good comes from there. Right? So Nathanael has this prejudice from that. And what you find out with that is that when I read these verses, it struck me that, you know, I think a lot of us have Nazareths in our own life today. I don't think it's just a situation back then. I think each and every single one of us can identify with having a Nazareth in our life, a situation in your life right now where you feel like nothing good can come out of that. Nothing good can come from this situation. Or maybe you felt like somebody that's coming from a Nazareth. Maybe you felt like somebody who people are like, nothing good can come from this person. Maybe someone who told you, you're not going to amount to anything. Where are you coming from? You got no pedigree, no background, no this, no that. Like, you're coming from a Nazareth in your life, right? Like, nothing good can come out of that. Maybe you felt that. Maybe you're facing, like I said, a situation right now where you're going, nothing good is going to come out of this situation. Maybe you're facing a health situation. You're like, I can't see anything good come out of this. Maybe you're facing a financial situation. You're like, I can't see anything good coming out of this situation. Maybe you're facing a family situation where you're like, nothing good is going to come out of this situation. Nothing good can come out of what's happening right now. Nothing good can happen. And the response that Philip had to Nathanael wasn't try to convince him and give him all the doctrine and all the reasons why he should. He just said simply 3 words. Why don't you come and see? Why don't you actually come and meet Jesus? I'm not going to try to convince you. Just take a second and come and meet this guy. And that's still the invitation that Jesus gives to every single one of us today. Come and see. That situation that you think nothing good can come out of, come and meet Jesus. Bring that situation to Jesus. See what he does. That situation, that person you think nothing good can happen with, come and see what Jesus can do in their lives. Come and see the power of God at work. See, I think a lot of us have come and see situations we're in right now, where the invitation is still exactly the same today as it was back then to Nathanael. Listen, you have this idea that God can't do anything with this part of your life. And the question is, will you come and see what Jesus can actually do and how he can transform it? See, that's how an encounter with Jesus always starts. It always starts with a response to his invitation to come and see what he can do in your life, to come and see how he can handle that situation, to come and see how he can break down your prejudice or your false assumptions about the Nazareth that you're facing. The things in your life that you're like, this is no good, no good. Avoid that at all costs. And he wants to take those, because you know what's funny about Jesus is he's always worked out of the Nazareth. Christianity came out of Nazareth. It came out of a place that no one thought was any good. And Jesus has always liked to work with the people that the society thought was no good, or has dismissed, has passed over. He's always worked out of Nazareth, if you think about it that way. He's always chosen, back in that culture, if you know the culture back then, the oldest son got everything in a family, okay? Just as an example. If you're the oldest son, you got everything. If you're the second, third, youngest son, you got nothing. But yet, if you look at the way Jesus worked, he always chose the youngest son instead of the oldest in the families. He chose Jacob instead of Esau. He chose David instead of his 11 older brothers. He loved to do the exact opposite of what people thought he was going to do and work through the things that people looked down on and despised. That was how Jesus worked. He always came out of the Nazareth situations. He always worked out of there. His whole ministry started from a place that no one thought he could even come from. Messiah can't come from that kind of place. The question is, how many times have you written that off in your life? In the situations you face, Jesus can't do anything with that. How many Nazareths do you have in your life where you're like, God can't touch that. Nothing good comes out of that. And he wants to say, listen, come and see what I can do. When you encounter me, when you respond to my invitation to come and see and meet me, I will show you just exactly how I can do more than you ever expected. So it starts with a response to an invitation when we come to meet Jesus, but then it moves into something that it's always a personal encounter. It's always personal. It's never just this general, I met God. No, it's always personal to you. He works through individuals and works in your life. And you see how he does this with Nathanael. Because as Nathanael goes, so Philip says, listen, you're skeptical, I get it. Maybe you're a skeptic in the room. Maybe you're one of those people who is like, I'm not cynical, I'm just always right. Like that, we had that kind of attitude. I don't know. Nathanael has that kind of thing, like, listen, all right, Philip, whatever, I know more than you do, but fine, okay, I'll come check him out. Because here's what I think. I think Nathanael was tired of not getting the answers he wanted. I think he had lived his life, and he'd been told that the Messiah was going to look a certain way, was going to act a certain way, was going to come from a certain place, and the answers that he got from people about what to do just didn't satisfy the longings of his heart. And so I think that when Jesus didn't sound like he was going to line up with what he wanted or what he expected the Messiah to be, I think deep down he still said, you know what? It may not sound like what I think God would be like, but I'm so desperate to understand and to have this connection, I'll go check it out. All right, Philip, I'll come with you. Fine, I'll come. Let's go see this Jesus guy and see if he's as great as you say he is. And so as they started walking toward Jesus, Jesus sees them a ways off. He sees them coming, and he pronounces loudly for everyone to hear. So there's other people around. So he wants people to hear him say this about this guy Nathanael. He says, now here is a genuine son of Israel, a man of complete integrity. So he's telling people as Nathanael's coming towards him, like, check this dude out. This guy's got an honest heart. He's a man of integrity. He's a man of character. Like, look at him. Here he comes, right? He's proclaiming who Nathanael is before he even gets there. So Nathanael has the question that a lot of us would normally have. And he goes, listen, how do you know about me? He walks up to Jesus. He's like, you're not wrong. Let's say I'm an honest guy. Like, I'm a good guy, Jesus. So you're not wrong about this. But how do you know me? Like, how do you know this about me? And so Jesus just slides this statement in there. I kind of pictured it being just kind of almost off the cuff. Like, well, okay, it's because I could see you under the fig tree before Philip even came and got you. And Nathanael's like, what? That statement, which just seems kind of off the cuff to Jesus, blew his mind. Because here's the thing, Nathanael in that moment is probably going, okay, I'm under the fig tree. He's probably thinking like, everyone that passed me, okay, there's this guy. I've never seen Jesus before in my life, which is why I asked him that question, like, how do you know me? And then he tells him, I saw you under the fig tree before Philip even got to you. And that blows his mind because he responds like this, Rabbi, which means teacher, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. His skepticism drops in a second when Jesus tells that to him. Now, why did that happen? What's so special about Jesus saying, I saw you under the fig tree? See, fig trees back then, in a biblical sense, they often refer to learning, to teaching. A lot of times rabbis would have their students gather underneath a fig tree to teach them scripture. Or students would go and hang out underneath a fig tree to learn and study God's word and study. So it always had this connotation of learning and teaching. So when someone said he saw them under the fig tree, he was probably studying scripture. Now, we don't exactly know what he was doing because they don't elaborate on what Nathanael was doing under the fig tree. So we can guess, we can kind of speculate, but we don't know. What we do know is that it was such a big deal that Jesus saw him doing it that it changed his whole perspective of who Jesus was in a second. And see, I think it starts with these three words that Jesus says. I could see you. I saw you. I see you. See, Jesus' encounters are always personal to us. He sees you. Because I picture Nathanael underneath this tree, and this is just my brain and the way it works, all right? I'll give you a little glimpse into that. But I'm picturing Nathanael underneath the tree, pacing back and forth, checking his watch, going, all right, I've studied the scriptures for a really long time. The Messiah still isn't here. I don't know if it's real. And if it's not real, then who am I? Because I based my life on it. And if I base my life on it and it's not real, then what do I amount to? Does God even see us anymore? Like these Roman guys, the Jews were under the oppression of Rome. They're like, the Romans are taking over. We're not free. We can't do what we want to do. Like, what is going on? I picture him pacing back and forth underneath a fig tree going, all right, God, I don't know if this is working anymore. Do you even care about me? Do you even care? I see your scriptures, but is it true? Do you even care about who I am? I see him going back and forth. And that's why when Jesus sees him come from so far off, he's like, listen, Nathanael, I know who you are in your heart. That's why he proclaims that about him. And then when he gets closer, he says something more personal. He says, listen, I saw you. I see you. Those 3 words from Jesus will change your life because he sees you. The invitation to an encounter with Jesus is always personal. He wants to let you know he sees you. The encounter he wants to have with you is not just some broad, random thing. He knows you deep down to the bottom parts of your soul. He sees you. And he wants to let you know that I've always seen you. That encounter that he's inviting you to come and see physically who Jesus is, he's saying the whole time, I've seen you. I've seen you underneath your fig tree. We all have different fig trees that we hide underneath. We have all different fig trees that we like to question what life is about. Where's God working? What's going on? Maybe you have those in your mind right now. God, I don't even know. You have that Nazareth attitude towards something that God's doing. You can't work with this. And Jesus wants to tell you right here and today that I see you. I know what's going on in your life. And I can work in that because I've known you since the beginning. I know who you are really. Now, Nathanael probably didn't feel like a guy full of integrity. He probably didn't feel like a guy who was a true Israelite. But Jesus was speaking to who he was, not necessarily how he felt about himself. Because Jesus sees the depth of who we are and who we were created to be, not just how others see us. And oftentimes, very often, how we don't see ourselves. And he calls out the best in us, and he says, I've always seen the best in you. I've always seen who you are, and I want to help you get there because I see you. And when you encounter Jesus, he tells you, I see you. I have seen you. There's nothing that you need to hide from me. So Nathanael goes through this process, and I think it just drops him to his knees because he's like, man, all those doubts. Jesus just set him aside with one sentence and said, I've known you. Now, I don't know about you, but those are powerful words to hear from the Lord. And in my life, many, many times, when I'm praying and spending time with God, I've heard that phrase where I've just been questioning things in my life. I've been wondering, God, do you see me? Do you love me? Do you care about me? And those 3 words, I see you. Man, those are life-changing words. Those are life-wrecking words. You just finally go, God, yes, you do. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And that's what happens to Nathanael. Jesus tells him he sees him, and it changes him forever. Changes him forever. And then he goes on to do this. So as you have that encounter, it's personal, it's invitational. But then after he exclaims, Rabbi, he tells him something deeper. Because the encounter with Jesus always leads us into an acknowledgement of deeper truth. Right? And we see this from Nathanael because then he goes on to say, you know what? You see this, but you're going to see something even greater. He goes on and he says this in verse towards the end of the story. He says, do you believe this just because I told you I'd seen you under the fig tree? He's like, listen, I get that seemed really cool to you, and you have no idea how I knew that about you, and you believed. But I'm telling you that you really don't even necessarily know who I am yet, because you're going to see greater things than this. He said, I tell you the truth, you will see heaven open and the angels of God going up and down on the Son of Man, the one who is a stairway between heaven and earth. Jesus stops right there and he tells Nathanael, you believe because I just did something really cool and I told you I saw you and you just dropped your whole skepticism and you believed in me in this moment. But I'm telling you right now, after you encounter me, there's a whole lot more to your relationship with me. There's a whole lot more to who I am. You think you know me, and you proclaimed me correctly as the King of Israel, the Messiah, but you still don't fully understand who I am. Let me tell you a little bit about what you're going to see as you get to know me. Let me tell you a little bit about how I'm going to be something greater and bigger than you can even imagine right now. And he takes him to a story that he would have been familiar with. And the story has to do with Jacob, back in Genesis. So I'm going to put the verse up for you. This is Genesis 28, the story of Jacob, which was one of the patriarchs of the Israelite, the Jewish people, right? And he's running from his brother Esau. And on his way running from his brother Esau, he stops at a place and he takes a nap with a rock for a pillow. Listen, not what I would do. I don't recommend sleeping on a rock for a pillow, but this is what Jacob did. He takes a nap, he lays down, he puts his head on the rock for a pillow, and in that moment he has a dream. And in that dream, it's a prophetic moment where he sees a ladder between heaven and earth, and angels going up and down that ladder. And so maybe you've heard the term Jacob's ladder. That's where this comes from, the story in the Bible. That term Jacob's ladder comes from that. So maybe you've heard that. So he sees heaven and earth. He sees angels going up and down, and angels represent God's presence. And then he wakes up and he goes, you know what? Wow, God was here. God was here, and he names that place Bethel. And Bethel means house of God. So in that moment, he wakes up and he saw this prophetic dream. And see what was going on is in that moment in Genesis, sin had blocked the presence of God. There's a wall that went up between us and the presence of God, between heaven and earth, because of sin, because of disobedience, because of all those things. And that's why they had the temple system. And that's why they had the sacrificial systems and all the things that God put in place to try to restore that presence. And he was seeing in that dream that there will come a time that that wall will be gone, and we will have direct access to the presence of God. And Jesus is telling Nathanael in that moment, guess what? You're looking at the fulfillment of that dream. I will be that bridge for people to come into the presence of God once and for all. I'm tearing away that wall that separates us from God. I am that person that you'll see, that ladder, that is me. I'm the bridge between us and God, so we have direct access to his presence again through me. So he's telling him by referencing that scripture, that story of Jacob, that he would have known that, listen, you're staring at the guy who changes everything. You believed in me because I could tell you that I saw you under a fig tree, but I'm telling you, the more you get to know me, the deeper you understand who I am, you're going to see that I am so much greater than anything you could have ever imagined. I am the fulfillment of the promise to bring us back into correct relationship with our Heavenly Father. That's a life-changing moment right there to understand that truth. Because here's the thing. Jesus very often is not what we expect, but he's always way more than we could ever imagine. Always way more than we could ever imagine. And it is only through a relationship with Jesus, a true encounter with understanding who we are because of him, that he can take your Nazareth situations and turn them into Bethels. Jesus is the only one who can take the situations in your life you think he cannot work in, they're impossible, that nothing good can come out of, and turn them into places where you declare, you know what? The presence of God is here. I see him moving. I see him acting. In those people that you think nothing good can come out of, he can take those people and do something where you go, wow, I see God moving. I see God acting. In those hopeless situations you have in your life, he can take those and say, listen, God's moving. God's acting. He can take your Nazareth situations and turn them into Bethels. And it is only through a true encounter with him that you can see that happen. So the question for you guys today as we start this series on learning to encounter Jesus is, will you respond to his invitation to come and see what he can do with your life? What he can do through those Nazareth situations. Because Jesus is always loving to come into those situations that you least expect him to be able to work in. The things that you have, the expectations you have of Jesus are often way too small. He wants to blow your mind and show you, I am way bigger than you could have ever imagined. I don't always work the way you expect. That's a good thing, because I think we have very low expectations of Jesus. But I am way more than you could ever imagine. And so today, as we close the service, we're going to do what we do every first Sunday of the month, and we're going to close with communion. And so when the worship team comes, they're going to play. And here's what I want you to remember when it comes to communion. Communion is a reminder of exactly what Jesus just told Nathanael at the end of that thing, that he is the connection for us to God. He is the one who tore down that wall between us and God, tore down the thing that blocked us from coming into the presence of the Lord through his death on the cross, through his sacrifice that he made and his being rose from the dead, conquering sin and death. He created a way for us to get back into God's presence. He created a way for us to be forgiven of our sins and be set free and come into that contact, that direct relationship with God once again. And that's what communion celebrates. It's a reminder of his blood and his body that was broken and shed so that we can once again come and see how amazing God is. We can come to the presence of the one who can take our Nazareth situations and make them Bethels. Who can take the worst situation you think God can't do with and make them some of the most amazing encounters you've ever had in your life. See, come and see is not just about salvation. It doesn't just stop with come and see, get to know Jesus, and stop there. You may have been a Christian for a long time, and Jesus still is having the same invitation to you today. Come and see. Come and see that I can change you. Come and see that I can help that situation. Come and see that I can fix this thing. Come and see that I'm bigger than your biggest doubts. Come and see that I am not finished with you yet. Come and see there's nothing going on in your life that I cannot help you with. Come and see that I can help you through that addiction. Come and see that I can help heal that relationship. Come and see that I can set you free in ways you've never known. The invitation is still today for everyone to come and see. It didn't stop back then. And so as we come to the table, as we close the service, the invitation to you is to come and see. Come and be reminded. Don't take this lightly. Jesus died for you so you can come and see once again that he can work in your lives in ways you never would have imagined. So communion is for you today. If you've stepped into that relationship with Jesus, if you've accepted his grace in your life and started, then the table is for you to come and be reminded of that. If you're still figuring that stuff out and you're like, I don't know, it's okay. You don't have to, there's no pressure to do this, and no one's going to judge you if you don't do it. But just know that communion is a reminder of the fact that Jesus once and for all punched through that ceiling that our sin had made between us and God. And he made a way for us to come into an encounter with him that'll forever change our lives. Because when you encounter Jesus, you'll never be the same again. Just like we saw in Nathanael's story. He was done. He was a totally different person from here on, from after that one encounter. So respond to Jesus' invitation. Let him speak to you personally, and let him draw you into a deeper truth and understanding of who he is than maybe you've ever had before. So that's what the Holy Spirit wants to do, I think, in your lives today, and I know he wants to do it in mine. So as the worship team comes, they're going to play, and as you feel led and are ready, come up. The communion's over there on both of these tables. Whenever you want to, come up and partake in that, and then we'll close up the service after that. But let me pray. God, I thank you for today. Lord, we love you so much. Thank you for being a God who wants to encounter us, who wants to know us deeply and richly. God, thank you for a God who invites us to come and see in this moment very much today. You are still doing the same thing today that you did back then. That encounter you have with Nathanael is an encounter you want to have with every single one of us, to come before you and bring our doubts, come before you and bring our biggest problems, come before you and bring all the things we think nothing good can come out of, and watch you do what only you can do. God, so we do. We surrender that today. We come to you, and we invite you into those things. We invite you into our lives, and we say, Lord, draw us deeper into who we are because of you. And here I pray. Amen.